everything you've ever heard about the Rooney Rule has been a lie, including the name being the Rooney Rule. For y'all that don't know, the Rooney Rule is the NFL's mandated policy that originally required every team with a head coaching vacancy to interview at least one or more diverse candidates before making a new hire. And if you let league PR tell it, it was Dan Rooney and his valiant allyship that led the way for more black and other minority coaches to get opportunities and blah, blah, blah. But that ain't even close to the truth. A more accurate name will be the Cochran Rule. Yes, that Cochran, Johnnie Cochran. And if you don't know why, then sit back and let me explain. Hey, like, follow, and subscribe. Don't make me stop this video and tell you again.
See qualified black candidates who don't even get a chance to interview for jobs, or they're in job situations where they're not allowed to interview.
Before the Cochran Rule was established, the NFL in its 83-year history, out of 400 head coaches, only had a whopping total of 6 black ones. And the number of white head coaches were, hold on, let's see here, carry the one, literally everybody else, with the exception of Super Bowl champion and Hall of Famer Tom Flores. Shout out to the Latino community. But to reiterate, in a league that in 2002 to 2003 had 70% black players, less than 1% of the coaches were black. The question was why? This leads to a deeper philosophical discussion about whether you believe everything in life is based off merit and merit alone, which if you're one of those people, I would envy your level of ignorance if it didn't lead to prejudice and bigoted rhetoric, such as, were black coaches simply inferior? Are teams that hire black coaches on average less successful than teams with white ones? It couldn't be racism of all things, because rich and powerful white men in hiring positions have never participated in racist practices. Well, one man decided that he was gonna investigate this.
Please welcome the man credited with getting O.J. Simpson acquitted. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Johnnie Cochran.
Now, for all 2 of you who don't know who the late Johnnie Cochran is, allow me a quick rundown. Cochran was an iconic black attorney that originally made his name fighting civil rights cases, mainly against police brutality and corporate overreach, who was so successful that, according to Reverend Jesse Jackson, a call to Cochran made corporations and violators shake. But no case made Cochran more famous than his role as the lead attorney in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. To this day, the most infamous trial in all of American pop culture, a 9-month-long, fully televised and covered legal battle viewed by, look, if by some miracle you just landed here from Mars and you've never heard of the OJ case, there's a million documentaries about it. I recommend this one by Ezra Edelman after you finish this video, of course, and leave a like. But as to why Cochran is important for this video, well, in 2002, after a winning streak that put the 96 Bulls to shame, Cochran set his eyes on the NFL's hiring practices, tagging in Cyrus Mehri, a labor and discrimination law attorney in Washington, D.C., and Dr. Janice F. Madden, PhD at the University of Pennsylvania, to research the history of black coaches in the NFL, releasing a report titled Black Coaches in the National Football League, Superior Performance, Inferior Opportunities. And we'll get to the findings in 1 second, but first, in a news conference that, dear God, somebody has buried, because I couldn't find video or audio of it anywhere. Cochran, in his usual eloquence, states, black coaches are being held to a higher standard. Now, we can litigate this, we can bring a lawsuit, but I think the NFL is reasonable. They understand this can end up in the courts, and they'd rather not see that happen. Let's see if we can have a dialogue. You only litigate if you've done everything you can to negotiate. The mere threat of Cochran suing you was nightmare fuel for anyone on the opposite end of it. Again, to quote Reverend Jesse Jackson, Cochran made corporations and violators shake.
In certain critical ways, the NFL is racially segregated and is managed much like a plantation.
The executive summary of the report reads as such: football is America's game, but it's more than a game. It is deeply woven into the fabric of our society and part of our shared culture as Americans. In city after city around the country, football provides a rich common ground for a diverse fan base. Each week, people of all backgrounds discuss, debate, celebrate, and agonize together over the fortunes and disappointments of their teams. We prepare black coaches in the National Football League Superior Performance, Inferior Opportunities because we too love this sport, and we believe that America's game should represent America's diversity and the best values in our society, unquote. I told y'all Johnny had a way with words. Over the almost 80-page report, a few notable but shocking discoveries were found. 1. black coaches average 1.1 more wins per season than the white coaches. 2. The black coaches led their teams to the playoffs 67% of the time versus 39% of the time for white coaches. 3. In their first season, black coaches averaged 2.7 more wins than the white coaches in their first season. 4. In their final season, terminated black coaches win an average of 1.3 more games than terminated white coaches. 5. Black coaches inherited teams with an average of 7.4 wins per season, and during their tenures increased the average wins for their teams to 9.1 per season. The report cited specific examples of black coaches that were passed over, such as Packers OC Sherman Lewis, who, unfun fact, was passed over for his own subordinate and quarterback coach Andy Reid, maybe you've heard of him, for a head coach's opportunity. Black coaches that were terminated the second they were anything short of excellent, such as Raiders head coach and Hall of Fame player Art Shell, who despite 3 playoff appearances, only finishing below 500 once, by 1 game by the way, was fired after a 9-7 season, immediately succeeded by his own subordinate and quarterback coach Mike White, who posted an 8-8 record the following season, and showed how no significant signs of improvement were being made in the current moment, citing the 2000 to 2002 hiring cycles. Of 21 head coaches that were hired, only 2 were black: Tony Dungy and Herman Edwards. Edwards being the only one getting his first crack at the head job, while Dungy was getting his second job after a dismissal from the Buccaneers, the first time that a Buccaneers coach was fired after having a winning season. The same Buccaneers that he developed before John Gruden swooped in, stole a ring off Dungy's hard work as an offensive coach with a bad offense, and has used that for his legacy until this very day, despite being a bigot, but I digress. Never one to point out problems without offering solutions though. Cochran even included an entire directory of available black coaching candidates, even including college coaches, because the NCAA wasn't in much better shape. The report was scathing, and in true Cochran fashion, it made headlines. But most importantly, it had the league shaking in their boots. Boy, the league got to scrambling so fast that even Mike Vick says sheesh. The NFL's go-to shit shoveler / spokesperson Greg Arillo came out to the press saying, guys, we're taking this so seriously. We're making progress, I swear. In 5 years, we interviewed 23 black head coaches, and we even hired 3 of them. So, Commissioner Tagliabue, who we covered in the concussions video, didn't comment on Cochran's report specifically. He wasn't really one to deal with, well, anything. Luckily for the league, in spite of themselves, there were people that looked at Cochran and Co.'s report and thought, maybe they have some points. Most notably, former NFL players Kellen Winslow Sr., yes that one, and John Wooten, who took the baton from Cochran and Co. and started beating anyone in league circles who would listen with it. Okay, now enter Dan Rooney, the then owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who out of the 32 owners was probably the first and only person to say, all right guys, we gotta do something about this. Rooney penned a letter to Tagliabue's led front office and said, bruh, just move. If you won't do something, I'll convince the owners to do something. Then Rooney et al. Created the Workplace Diversity Committee that later went on to implement what we know as the Rooney Rule. So to recap, Tony Dungy and Dennis Green get fired. Cochran and Co. formed their report and threatened the lawsuit. Winslow, Wooten, and current NFL players all advocated for it. And the rule gets named after Dan Rooney. Sounds about right.
The Rooney Rule was passed by the NFL in 2003 as an attempt to try to improve diversity among head coaches in the NFL.
Now, the effectiveness of the Rooney Rule has been complicated, to say the very least. Let's start positive. Prior to the rule, there were only 7 black/minority head coaches in league history. Since then, there have been 27. The league even expanded the rule to require 2 interviews of minority candidates, then extended those requirements for GM and coordinator positions. So, progress, right? Yes, but no. At this very moment, out of 32 head coaches, only 5 are black. Better than 2 in 2003, but that doesn't exactly scream equity, now does it? Plus, we still haven't treated the original disease. We treated a symptom. Black coaches didn't magically get 285% better since '03. They just weren't getting looked at. The fact that this rule even had to be implemented just for black coaches to get interviews screams to a much larger sickness that, as always, leads back to America's original sin. And in the original stages, even having the rule wasn't enough. In 2003, the Detroit Lions got fined $200K because they refused to interview a black coaching candidate before hiring Steve Mariucci, which is objectively hilarious for a couple reasons. First, Mariucci went on to win less than 35% of his games in his 3 years in Detroit, getting fired week 12 in the 3rd year. Second, the Lions only made the playoffs 5 times since this happened, and in all but one of them, they had a black head coach in Jim Caldwell or a black GM in Brad Holmes. So clearly, betting on black has worked out pretty well for Detroit. Y'all should learn from their mistakes. Just saying. There's a lot more we can dig into here, like the actual quality of the opportunities that black head coaches get, teams with no cap space, no quarterback, etc., etc., etc. The fact that they still have a shorter margin of error than their white counterparts, black coaches still being 3 times more likely to get fired after their first season, see Gerard Mayo and Antonio Pierce for example, or the fact that I wanted to do a Black Head Coaches Month for Black History Month, only I couldn't because there haven't been 28 black head coaches yet. Okay, so now, a happy conclusion. The Cochran Rule, has done some amazing work. So many black and other minority coaches have gotten opportunities that, historically speaking, they wouldn't have even got the chance to know existed. Is it perfect? No. Did it solve racism in the NFL? Absolutely the not. But it's damn sure better than the alternative. Because if history, or recent times, tells us anything, if they have an opportunity to exclude us without penalty, they will take it. Thanks for watching.